The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly before the human ship Dauntless. Stars glittered like tiny shards of light scattered across a black ocean, yet none could match the feeling of anticipation that gripped Captain Elias Kane as he stood on the bridge. This was uncharted territory, a part of the galaxy where no human had dared set foot. Yet here they were, not running, not hiding, but moving forward with steady purpose. The human crew was tense but resolute. Engineers hurried along narrow corridors, checking systems that hummed and vibrated beneath their feet. Pilots and navigators studied screens glowing with data, tracing the path ahead through gravitational anomalies and interstellar storms. Every human on board knew the stakes. Beyond this point lay the territory of the Zithari Empire, a civilization whose fleets spanned entire star clusters. Legends spoke of their cruelty, their ability to crush entire worlds with a single strike, and their hatred for anything they did not control. Still, the humans pressed on. Fear existed, of course, it always did, but it was tempered by something stronger: curiosity, courage, and an unshakable belief that no challenge could define them unless they allowed it. Kane looked at his crew with quiet pride. "Remember," he said, his voice calm but firm, "we don't run from what we don't understand. We face it. That's what makes us human." The ship's sensors picked up the first signs of the Empire ahead. Massive structures hung in orbit around a blue giant star, shimmering with energy shields and the glow of countless vessels. The sight was awe-inspiring and terrifying at once. Entire fleets moved in perfect formation, vast enough that even from a distance the humans could see the disciplined precision that had kept the Zithari unchallenged for centuries. Kane's heart pounded, yet his hands rested steady on the rail. He had seen danger before, but never like this. Never an enemy, so vast, so organized, so absolute in its power. "Captain," Lieutenant Mara Venn said, her voice tinged with excitement, "we're being scanned. They know we're here." Kane nodded. He had expected as much. "Good," he replied. "Let them see us. Let them understand that we're not afraid." A moment later, the first communication attempt came through, a cold, metallic voice that carried the weight of authority and the menace of 1,000 battles fought and won. "Humans," it said, "you are trespassing in Imperial space. Identify yourselves or be destroyed." Kane straightened, his gaze firm on the view screen. "We are humans from Sol. We explore. We come in peace, but make no mistake, we will not flee from anyone." The message echoed across the void, carrying a strange mix of respect and audacity. The humans were small, fragile even, compared to the towering might of the Zithari fleets. Yet they did not shrink. They did not hesitate. They held their ground in the face of a civilization that had never tolerated defiance. For a moment, silence filled the bridge. Every human held their breath, waiting for the inevitable: an attack, a warning, a declaration of war. But Kane did not flinch. His mind raced with possibilities, strategies, and the knowledge that their survival depended not only on weapons but on courage, ingenuity, and heart. Outside, the stars continued to blaze silently. Inside, the humans prepared to meet the galaxy's greatest empire, unbowed and unbroken. Somewhere deep in the Zithari fleets, sensors would record this audacity, marking the beginning of a story that no one would forget. As the Dauntless advanced, gliding past glowing warships and massive orbital structures, Kane allowed himself a small smile. The journey had only just begun, but already humanity was showing the galaxy that fear was not their language. Curiosity was, bravery was, and for the first time, an empire would witness what it meant to face humans without fear. The Dauntless drifted closer to the heart of the Zithari Empire, every inch of space around them filled with massive warships and glowing orbital fortresses. Captain Kane stood on the bridge, his eyes scanning the endless formations of alien vessels. The Zithari were everywhere, a web of power and control that had crushed countless civilizations before. Yet, Kane felt no fear, only the steady pulse of determination that humans had carried across centuries of survival and exploration. The first communication attempt had been cold, commanding, almost mocking. Now, as sensors picked up subtle shifts in the Zithari formations, it became clear that the Empire was assessing them, trying to measure the courage of a species it had never feared before. Lieutenant Mara Ven tapped at her console, bringing a holographic display to life. "Captain," she said, "their fleet is reorganizing. They're responding to us, but it's strange. They're hesitant." Kane's jaw tightened. "Hesitation is a weakness," he said quietly, almost to himself. "And every empire has weaknesses, no matter how strong it seems." A Zithari admiral appeared on the main view screen. He was tall, silver-skinned, and his eyes glowed faintly with an inner light. His voice, amplified by technology, reverberated across the bridge like a hammer striking stone. "Humans," he said, "you dare to enter Imperial space. You are insignificant. Your ships are toys, and yet you speak as if you have power. Explain yourselves, or be destroyed." Kane's voice was calm, steady, almost gentle, but it carried an unmistakable firmness. "We are humans from Sol. We explore. We seek knowledge, and we face the unknown as it comes. We do not flee, we do not bow, we do not fear." There was a pause, a silence so thick that even the hum of the Dauntless's engines seemed loud. Mara whispered, "Captain, that took courage." Kane shook his head slightly. "It's not courage if it's natural," he replied. "It's who we are. Fear may exist, but it does not control us." The Zithari admiral's expression flickered, almost curiosity, almost disbelief. "Peace?" he asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. "You speak of peace as if it were strength. You are fragile, weak, and foolish." Kane leaned forward. "Peace is not weakness," he said. "Strength without compassion is tyranny. If you cannot understand that, you may rule many worlds, but you will never rule hearts." The words seemed to reverberate through the Zithari fleet. For the first time, the humans sensed that they were not just being threatened. They were being tested. The Empire had never met beings who responded with defiance and clarity, who spoke of honor and courage instead of surrender. Suddenly, the Zithari fleet shifted, moving into formation around the humans. A silent message: "Prove yourself, or perish." The tension on the Dauntless was palpable. Every crew member felt it, the enormity of what lay ahead, the uncertainty, and yet the undeniable pride in being human. Kane turned to his crew. "Prepare for anything," he said. "They may strike, they may try to intimidate. But remember, this. Our strength is not only in our weapons, it is in our unity, our resolve, and our refusal to bow. Today we are more than a ship. We are humanity." As the Dauntless glided through the Empire's fleet, sensors scanning the massive ships around them, Kane allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Generations of humans had survived impossible odds, wars, disasters, and extinction threats. And now, in the silent cold of space, they were about to face their greatest test yet. The Zithari may have ruled countless worlds, but they had never faced humans who stood firm in the face of overwhelming power. And as the Dauntless moved steadily forward, unshaken, the humans knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy would remember this day, the day a small, fragile species refused to bow before an empire. The void of space suddenly erupted in a burst of light and soundless violence. Plasma beams streaked past the hull of the Dauntless, and warning alarms blared as the Zithari launched their first attack. Captain Kane's crew reacted with trained precision, moving like a single organism, their focus sharp and unshakable, shields at 90%. Engineer Ramos shouted, fingers flying across his console as energy barriers flared under the assault. Sparks danced along the walls as systems strained against the bombardment. Mara Ven gritted her teeth, fingers steady on the navigation panel. "Evasive maneuvers ready, Captain. They're trying to box us in." Kane's jaw tightened. "Then we will box them in first," he said calmly. There was no panic in his voice, only determination. Humans were not born to cower. Every strike, Every countermeasure, every heartbeat on that ship was proof of their resilience. The first volley of missiles streaked past, swallowed by the Dauntless's shields. Kane gave the order, and their own weapons flared to life, launching swarms of high-velocity lasers toward the approaching Zithari vessels. The attacks were precise, surgical. Humans did not have the sheer numbers or size of the Zithari ships, but they had ingenuity, adaptability, and the uncanny ability to turn weaknesses into strength. On the view screen, the massive Zithari warships recoiled slightly as lasers struck weak points that their sensors had failed to predict. One human ship alone had already caused confusion in the Empire's fleet. The Zithari had never faced an enemy that moved unpredictably, fought creatively, and refused to surrender under overwhelming pressure. A sudden impact shook the Dauntless. "Hull breach in Sector 4, shouted Engineer Ramos. The crew rushed to seal the damage, floating through zero gravity as fire suppressants hissed. Kane watched calmly, knowing that fear would achieve nothing. Humans had survived harsher conditions, greater dangers, and worse odds. This was just another test. "Return fire. Target their lead frigates," Kane commanded. Mara twisted the controls, spinning the ship through the chaos of beams and missiles, evading attacks that would have destroyed any other vessel. The Dauntless became a whirlwind of fire and movement, slipping between Zithari formations, striking with precise bursts and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Every maneuver, every counterattack, was a message. Humans would not be broken. Their courage became a weapon as effective as any laser or missile. The Zithari began to hesitate, unable to anticipate a strategy so unpredictable. The humans were a force the Empire had not considered, a species that relied on heart, instinct, and sheer willpower as much as technology. Amid the chaos, Kane activated a daring plan. A small shuttle detached from the main ship, carrying supplies and emergency aid to a damaged Zithari vessel caught in the crossfire. Mara looked at him in disbelief. "Captain, you're going to save them?" Kane nodded. "Strength without mercy is cruelty. Let them see who we are. Let them see that courage and compassion can exist together." The shuttle moved through the storm of fire and energy, reaching the crippled Zithari ship. The humans worked quickly, repairing critical systems and saving lives. Sensors on the enemy fleet recorded the act, confusion and admiration flickering across Zithari faces for the first time. They had never encountered enemies who fought fiercely and healed those they opposed. By the time the battle ended, the Dauntless floated among scattered Zithari vessels, shields flickering but intact. Humans had survived their first encounter with the Empire, not through sheer force but through courage, creativity, and a refusal to surrender. Kane looked at his crew, pride swelling in his chest. "Today," he said, voice calm but resonant, "we did not just survive. We reminded the galaxy that fear cannot control us. We are human and we face the impossible head-on." Outside the windows, the stars burned quietly as if applauding. The humans had stood against a galactic empire and survived. And for the first time, the Zithari knew they were not dealing with a weak species. They were facing a force born of courage, resilience, and the unshakable human spirit. The battle had ended, but the echoes of it lingered in the void. The Dauntless floated among the scattered remnants of the Zithari fleet, its hull battered but holding strong. Inside, the Tau. Crew moved with quiet purpose, repairing systems, checking shields, and tending to the minor injuries of their team. Captain Kane walked among them, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and pride. Humans had survived the impossible, not through overwhelming force but through courage, creativity, and the determination to act with honor. Far across the star-strewn expanse, the Zithari fleet observed. Their sensors recorded every action of the humans, every maneuver, and every decision. What had been considered a minor species, fragile and insignificant, had survived attacks that should have destroyed them. They moved with efficiency, yes, but more importantly, they moved with unity, compassion, and a refusal to be broken. Lieutenant. Mara Venn studied the latest data feeds, her eyes wide. "Captain, they're analyzing us. The Zithari, they don't understand how we survive." Kane nodded, leaning on the bridge rail. "Of course they don't. They've never met a species like us. They measure power in numbers and firepower, but humans measure it in courage and heart and the ability to face fear and keep moving forward. A small damaged Zithari ship drifted in the distance, still operational but crippled from the battle. Kane made a decision that surprised even his own crew. "Prepare a shuttle," he said. "We're going to help them." The crew moved quickly, donning protective suits and loading supplies. Mara glanced at Kane, hesitant. "Captain, we're helping them, after they tried to destroy us?" Kane met her gaze with calm eyes. "Because strength without compassion is meaningless. Let them see what it means to be human. Let them see why courage matters more than fear." The shuttle detached from the Dauntless, gliding through the remnants of the battle. Plasma arcs and twisted metal surrounded it, but the humans moved, with precision and care. Inside the Zithari ship, crew members were stunned as humans arrived, offering medical aid and repairs. They worked tirelessly, repairing engines, patching hull breaches, and providing food and water. Outside, the Zithari fleet watched in silence. Sensors picked up every movement, every act of care. A few officers whispered among themselves, Why help them? They are our enemies." This is not weakness," another replied. "It is extraordinary." Back on the Dauntless, Kane addressed his crew over the comms. "This is who we are. Bravery is not just in battle. It is in doing what is right even when it is difficult. Compassion is a weapon stronger than fear. Remember that." For hours, humans worked alongside their would-be enemies, and slowly, the Zithari began to understand. They had ruled countless civilizations, crushed entire planets, and yet they had never encountered a species that could survive, fight, and still show mercy. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but their unpredictability came from something deeper: heart, courage, and a will that could not be broken. By the time the shuttle returned to the Dauntless, the humans had not only repaired a ship, they had shifted the perception of an empire. The Zithari had seen the impossible, a species small in numbers but immense in spirit. Kane stood on the bridge looking at the stars. "The galaxy may not understand us yet," he said softly. "But today, we've taught them something. We've shown them what it means to be human. Fear does not control us. Courage does. Compassion does. And that is a power no empire can ever truly conquer." Outside, the stars shimmered quietly, as if bearing witness. In the silence of space, the humans' message had already begun to spread. They were more than explorers. They were a force born of resilience, of heart, and of the unshakable human spirit. And the Zithari would never forget it. Days passed since the first battle, yet the tension in the void only grew thicker. The Zithari Empire, once untouchable and certain of its supremacy, now watched the humans with a mixture of disbelief and unease. Captain Kane stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, his eyes scanning the massive formations of alien ships that surrounded them. Every move the humans made was precise, careful, and yet bold, an audacity that no one in the Empire had ever faced. Lieutenant Mara Venn tapped at her console nervously. "Captain, they're bringing more ships, hundreds, maybe thousands. They want to overwhelm us." Kane nodded, his expression calm. "Then let them come. Every empire believes numbers are strength, but we'll show them that courage, heart, and ingenuity are just as powerful. Remember, humans survive against impossible odds, always." The first wave of the new Zithari fleet arrived with thunderous energy beams, cutting across space like fiery rivers. But the Dauntless did not panic. Humans moved with unity, executing maneuvers so fluid that even the Zithari sensors couldn't predict their next strike. One ship, one crew, seemed to dance through a storm that could have swallowed entire civilizations. Suddenly, a massive Zithari admiral appeared on the main view screen, his towering figure framed by the glow of his fleet. His voice boomed across the void. "Humans, you defy us with your audacity. You are weak. You are insignificant. Why do you not surrender?" Kane stepped forward, his gaze steady, his voice calm but resolute. We do not surrender, because we will not. We do not bow, because fear does not control us. You may have your empire, your fleets, your weapons, but you do not have our spirit, and that is something no one can conquer. There was a flicker of doubt across the Admiral's face, barely noticeable, but it was there. The humans had done something the Empire could not ignore. Their actions had planted a seed. Perhaps strength was not only measured in firepower, but in courage, in honor, and in the unyielding will to stand tall. Kane turned to his crew. Prepare for combat, but remember, our greatest weapon is our humanity. We fight with skill, yes, but also with heart. Let them see what it means to face humans. As the battle unfolded, the Dauntless executed daring tactics, weaving through the Zithari ships, striking vulnerable points and retreating before the enemy could respond. Every movement, every shot was a statement. Humans could survive anything, adapt to any situation, and defy expectations at every turn. And then came the boldest act of all. Kane ordered a small fleet of shuttles to approach the enemy armada, carrying supplies and repairs for Zithari ships damaged in the skirmish. The Zithari watched, shocked and confused as humans risked themselves to save the very ships that could have destroyed them. One Zithari officer whispered to another, disbelief in his voice. Why? Why would they help us? They are our enemies. The other shook his head slowly. It is something we do not understand. They are extraordinary. The humans' combination of courage, compassion, and audacity shattered the Empire's pride. The Zithari generals began questioning their strategy, their leaders, and even the infallibility of the Empire itself. What had once seemed unbreakable now wavered, trembling under the force of a species they had dismissed. Kane stood tall on the bridge of the Dauntless, his eyes scanning the stars beyond the Zithari fleet. We are humans, he said softly, but firmly. We do not run. We do not fear. We do not bow. And today, we have reminded the galaxy that courage and compassion can break even the greatest pride. Outside, the stars shone brightly, as if witnessing the shift in history. The humans had done more than survive. They had shaken the foundations of an empire. For the first time, the Zithari saw the truth. Humans were not a species to be underestimated. They were a force, small yet indomitable, fragile yet unbreakable, and their spirit burned brighter than any weapon. The Zithari Empire was not accustomed to failure, nor to doubt. Yet as the Dauntless and its human crew moved steadily through the Empire's fleets, hesitation spread like wildfire. Ships that had once moved with perfect precision now faltered. Commanders argued. Sensors that were supposed to anticipate. Every human maneuver failed repeatedly. The humans were unpredictable in ways the Zithari could not compute, and their courage was infuriatingly contagious. Captain Kane stood on the bridge, calm but focused. They're trying to overwhelm us, he said. Good. Let them try. We will show them what it means to face humans without fear. Lieutenant Maraven's fingers flew across the console. Shields are holding, Captain, weapons are ready, but the numbers are staggering. They're closing in from all sides. Kane nodded. Then we make them hesitate. We make them think twice. Remember, it's not just firepower that wins battles, it's heart, it's courage, and it's refusing to be broken. The first volleys of plasma and laser fire streaked across space. The humans responded with unmatched skill, dodging, weaving, and striking with precision. Every movement was calculated, yet carried a sense of fearless instinct. They were small against the massive fleets, yet their actions left gaps in the enemy formations and confusion in the Zithari ranks. Amid the chaos, Kane made a bold decision. Deploy the shuttles, he ordered. Go to the damaged ships in their fleet, we will save them. Mara looked shocked. Captain, we're helping them while they're attacking us? Yes, Kane replied. Strength without mercy is meaningless. They need to see what humans truly are. They need to understand that courage and compassion can exist together. Shuttles detached, slipping through the storm of fire and destruction. They reached the crippled Zithari vessels and began emergency repairs. Crew members worked quickly, saving lives and restoring critical systems. Outside, the Zithari watched in stunned silence. No species had ever acted like this, facing danger, and yet extending aid to those who could have destroyed them. One Zithari officer whispered to another, disbelief heavy in his voice. Why? Why do they help us? They are our enemies. Another replied slowly, It is extraordinary. They are not like any species we have known. Back on the Dauntless, Kane addressed his crew. This is our strength. Not in numbers, not in size, but in heart. We survive because we refuse to be broken. And today we prove that courage, honor, and compassion are weapons no empire can ignore. The humans moved through the Zithari fleet, with unmatched coordination, striking weak points and saving the lives of enemy crews. The Empire's confidence faltered. Doubt spread among their generals, confusion reached the Emperor himself, and the once perfect formations began to collapse. For the first time in centuries, the Zithari faced uncertainty, and it was not because of superior numbers or technology, it was because of humans. Their unpredictability, their courage, their refusal to bow or break had become an unstoppable force. As the battle began to shift, Kane looked at his crew, pride and emotion swelling in his chest. Today, he said softly, we show them that humans are not just survivors. We are fearless, resourceful, and unbreakable. We are more than a species. We are a statement, and no empire, no matter how vast, can take that from us. The stars beyond the fleet shone quietly, witnesses to the audacity of humans. The Dauntless and its crew moved steadily onward, unbroken, undeterred, and unstoppable. They had faced an empire, survived its fury, and begun to turn fear into respect. Humanity's spirit burned brighter than any weapon, and the galaxy would remember it forever. The silence after the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. The Zithari fleets hovered, their once perfect formations shattered, their commanders unsure of how to respond. The humans aboard the Dauntless floated through the remnants of the encounter, exhausted but unbroken. Their shields flickered, their hull bore scars from plasma strikes, yet not a single human had lost the courage that had carried them through. Captain Kane stood on the bridge looking out at the towering Zithari ships. For centuries, the Empire had ruled countless worlds without challenge. Entire civilizations had fallen at their feet. But now, staring at a single human vessel and its crew, the Zithari faced a truth they had never imagined. Courage could match, technology, heart could rival fleets, and spirit could overcome fear itself. A massive hologram flickered into view, displaying the Zithari Emperor. His voice rumbled across the void, filled with both authority and disbelief. Humans, you have survived our fleets. You have defied us. Why do you not kneel? Kane stepped forward, voice steady and strong, carrying the weight of every human who had ever dared to face the impossible. We do not kneel because we cannot. We do not fear because fear does not define us. You may rule planets, you may command fleets, but you will never control what it means to be human. Our spirit, our courage, and our heart are ours alone, and that is something no empire can take. A hush fell over the Zithari fleet. For the first time, they were silent, not out of fear, but out of awe. The humans had not just survived. They had shown what it meant to face impossible odds and remain unbroken. Their bravery, their ingenuity, and their compassion had pierced the pride of the galaxy's most feared empire. Kane turned to his crew, eyes filled with quiet pride. Today we have done more than fight, he said softly. We have shown the galaxy who we are. Not as conquerors, not as invaders, but as humans. Fearless, resilient, united, and full of heart. Outside, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if the galaxy itself bore witness to humanity's defiance. Ships that had once threatened annihilation now watched in stunned respect. Crews who had known only conquest now understood that strength was not measured in size or firepower alone. Courage, compassion, and the refusal to bow were powers no empire could ignore. The humans returned to their course, their mission unchanged. They explored, they learned, and they continued their journey through the stars. But the story of the Dauntless and its crew would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Tales of a tiny human ship that walked into an empire and faced it without fear would inspire countless species, shaping a new understanding of what it meant to be truly brave. The Zithari, humbled but wiser, began to question their empire's methods. They had faced humans and learned a truth they could not forget. Power alone was not enough to dominate a species with courage. Respect could not be commanded. It had to be earned. And humans had earned it in the most profound way imaginable. Kane stood at the bridge one last time before setting the course for the next uncharted star system. He thought of every human who had lived, fought, and dared to dream. Their spirit, their audacity, their refusal to bend to fear, it all flowed through him and every member of his crew. "We are humans," he whispered, almost to the stars themselves, "and we will never stop standing tall." As the Dauntless glided into the unknown, the galaxy remembered. The Zithari fleets would never forget, and every corner of space would carry the legend. The day humans walked straight into an empire, faced it without fear, and reminded the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. In that silence, in that vastness, humanity had left its mark. Not as conquerors, but as a force unbroken, unshakable, and unforgettable.